I'm Karen Budd-Falen. I'm an attorney from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I'm not sure how I got up here with all these guys that tote guns. But the next time I have to go to Portland to a salmon hearing with Judge Redden, if one of y'all wouldn't mind coming with me, that would be a really good thing. You know, I think a lot of people don't know that attorneys take an oath too. We also take an oath to uphold the Constitution. And you know what one of the saddest thing is that when you go to law school, you don't read the Constitution. You don't read it from top to bottom. And they don't teach you what that Constitution means. What people need to understand is that the Constitution is the foundation. The word Constitution means foundation. And if you don't have a good foundation of your home will crumble. If we don't have a good foundation for this country will crumble. Now let me tell you a few things about the Constitution that you all should keep in mind. One of them is if you read the Constitution, you will understand that the way it is set up, that the federal government and state government has to have a law for everything that they do. When the federal government comes out and asks you about, or tells you what they're doing, you have the right to say, and what law allows you to do that? But it doesn't work the other way around. The Constitution made the citizens of the United States free people. And so we can do anything that the law does not prohibit. And I gotta tell you, I think in Washington they kind of got that swamped. And I think we have to start enforcing that. We have to start asking, what law gives you the right to stop my use? What law gives you the right to come into my county and all of a sudden start closing roads? Now, I grew up on a cattle ranch. I'm the 5th generation to live in that same old house in Big Piney, Wyoming. And it was really interesting growing up on that ranch because we used to go to meetings where they would try to tell us that our cattle 150 miles away were somehow or the other impacting the geysers in Yellowstone Park. I am not kidding you. And I would listen to these guys and think, you know, if we were as bad as they say that we are, we'd have put ourselves out of business 4 generations ago. You should be proud of what you do and proud of who you are, and you do not need a law to be able to manage your homes and manage your lives. Now let me tell you something else about the Constitution. I think this is really interesting. You know Daniel Webster, the guy that wrote the dictionary? He did not write the first dictionary so y'all could spell better. In fact, if you look at one of the first dictionaries in the first publication in the very front, it says that he wrote the dictionary so that they couldn't change the meaning of the words in the Constitution. When the founders were inspired to write that document, he was so concerned that the courts would screw it up. He wrote the dictionary to keep those meanings true to what the founders envisioned for this country. And another thing you've got to remember is that a lot of people make the mistake and they call it my constitutional rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution does not give you rights. God gives you rights. The Constitution is the document that stops the government from taking your rights. So the next time you hear somebody talk about your constitutional right, you should correct them and say, no, it's my guaranteed right, because that is not where your rights came from. And if you look at the Federalist Papers, if you look at the writings of the founders, they wrote the Bill of Rights, and even though private property is not mentioned until the Fifth Amendment, they believe that the foundation for every single right in this country, our freedom of speech, our freedom to vote, our freedom to petition, it's all based on the right of ownership of private property. And it doesn't matter whether that private property is my parents' ranch in Big Piney, Wyoming, or your right to make a living and to hold something, or your ideas, they're your property. And the founding fathers believed that that was the basis for every other freedom we have in this country. Now, I don't want to go over my 5 minutes with all these guys with guns up here, but I am going to tell you one of the questions you've been asking is, why is this happening? I can tell you one of the reasons it's happening is because the federal government pays environmental groups to sue the federal government to stop your use of your property. And the federal government doesn't even track the money. They have absolutely no idea how much money they've paid. Right now, in the salmon litigation that was filed by Earth Justice representing the National Wildlife Federation, the federal government, for litigation that's not over, has paid $2 million to the environmental groups. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're funding your own demise, because that kind of money is going to these groups. Because the federal government doesn't track it. Sitting in my little law firm with a computer and a paralegal in Cheyenne, Wyoming, we tracked $36 million paid to 19 environmental groups in 9 years. And we only polled 19 states. You imagine how much money we're talking about if we're looking at all the states? This kind of madness has to stop. We have to get control of this government. One way to do that is rallies like this, standing with sheriffs like this, standing up for our country, teaching our children. I got to tell you one quick story. We were reading in the newspaper the other day about how the federal government is trying to rebrand itself, you know, like advertising. They are. They're trying to rebrand themselves as the federal family. Because according to the newspaper, that sounds better than the bureaucracy. And so my husband and I are standing in the kitchen and we're laughing about the federal family, and my 17-year-old son rolls his eyes and says, "This is the most dysfunctional family I have ever heard of." So thank you for having me. I appreciate your sheriffs. I appreciate you for electing them, and keep up the fight.